Last time we made noise. This time, we have movement. Now that we have the engine running, we gotta get it up to operating temperature. Open all the bleeder valves at the radiator and start filling it with coolant. The aftermarket throttle body I'm using had a bracket that didn't quite fit the throttle cable. I made an extension, welded it to the original bracket, painted it black to make it look like it didn't happen, and installed it on the throttle body. Next, we torqued the motor mount on the passenger side to 38 foot-pounds, the mount to the transmission at 38 foot-pounds, the bolt through the mount at 64 foot-pounds, and the rear mount at 69 foot-pounds. There's an optional fourth mount in the front that's recommended, but I don't have the correct bracket yet, so that'll be added in the future. Now we start reattaching the suspension. I realized I should have waited to do this until the axle was in place. Take the rear uprights and bolt into the strut bar using the 2 bolts. The camera angle sucks, but there's also a front linkage that needs to be placed and bolted as well. Now we take the axle, apply grease to the splines, and push it into the transmission. Rotate the axle slightly until it's able to sit into place. You'll be able to notice when the spline lines up and it gets pushed in further.
There it is.
Apply grease to the outside spline that goes into the hub. Unbolt the linkages attached to the upright and slide the hub onto the axle. Now we start to reattach all the suspension, starting with the strut. Front linkage, then rear linkage. Place the axle nut on and keep it hand tight for now. I found conflicting values online, but I torqued the 2 strut bolts to 59 foot-pounds, front linkage to 58 foot-pounds, and rear control arm to 64 foot-pounds, so I guess we'll see if I'm right. Next, we install the rear brake pads, rotor, and brake caliper. And now we repeat all the steps for the opposite side. Next, we reattach the sway bar mounts held on by 2 bolts torqued to 33 foot-pounds. Now we change the oil that we started up with since it has all the assembly lube and other potential contaminants. I checked the magnetic drain plug for any early signs of failure. It had a slight metallic film on it, and researching online, this is either expected or it's a ticking time bomb, so I guess we'll see. The oil itself didn't have any glitter in it, which is a promising sign. Next, we install the rest of the exhaust, which is a custom solution that I bought, so none of the hangers are useful. And then we install the rear crash bar. For the first time in over 2 years, the car's sitting on all 4 wheels, another significant milestone. With the car finally on the ground, we can torque the axle nuts to 159 foot-pounds. We let the car run and warm up again to bleed the cooling system. We also connected a laptop to monitor all the sensors to make sure there are no warnings of failure. I was excited and took it for a 5-minute drive around the block, but before I could get any footage that wasn't complete garbage, there was a big pop and smoke coming from the rear. We didn't tie down the battery, so it shorted to the chassis. Luckily nothing got fried, but it did leave a little scar in the firewall. With the car officially drivable, we can get it off of those ugly wheels. I went with bronze Koenig decograms because I love bronze wheels and they're lightweight. Keeping unsprung mass to a minimum is crucial to a car's handling characteristics, and I'll go into why in a future video. With the additional horsepower, we need to add some stopping power. With the wheels off, we can upgrade the rotors and pads as well. I bought a set of StopTech slotted rotors. I like these because they are lighter than whatever was on the car from the previous owner, again decreasing that unsprung mass. But they're also grooved and not drilled through. This reduces stress concentrations and makes them less prone to cracking. With the rotors, I also went with StopTech street pads. These will be more than enough for me, especially since it'll be a while since this car sees any meaningful track time. Place the pads in the caliper bracket using the metal clips and put the caliper on. Can you turn the wheel to the left? Sorry, right? Torque the bracket bolts to 80 foot-pounds and the slide pins to 25 foot-pounds. To go with the new wheels, I bought some new lugs and wheel locks. Now we just have to place the center caps and we can finally lower the car. Seeing the car this close to its final form had us ecstatic and motivation was sky high.
Yeah, that's good.
Now we do the same brake upgrades to the rear. Next we go back to the crash bar and torque all the bolts to 128 foot-pounds. Now we're getting into street legal territory. Plug in the electrical connector and tighten the 3 bolts holding each taillight. I don't have a torque spec, so use your best judgment. Next we install the battery. Since we're older and wiser now, we're going to do it the proper way using the bracket to secure it. Now we install whatever this panel is called on a mid-engine car by torquing the 4 bolts to the hinge on each side. I don't have a torque spec for any body panel, so we just gotta use our best judgment. Now we can put the rear wheels on, torquing them to 76 foot-pounds. I did one more oil change to see how the drain plug would look, and we have similar results. At this point, I'm a little nervous, but I guess we can see what happens.
The internet's gonna love this. Go for it. A lot of sparks.
We noticed that the air-fuel ratio was reading very lean, and this was due to a pinhole leak in the exhaust right next to the wideband O2 sensor. We fixed this using a cheap MIG welder. I took the car to a nearby parking lot and did laps for a little while as a final shakedown. After that, I made a promise to management that the first place we would go out is for ice cream. After about 100 miles of driving, there are a couple things I want to take care of. The rattling heat shield, something was contacting the rotor, and the tires rubbing in the back. For the rotor, I installed the metal clip like an idiot, so that was the cause of the brake problem. For the heat shield, I just installed a random bolt that I found. And then for the tire rubbing problem, I tried the free sketchy way of rolling my fenders. The rear bumper is pretty beat up, so we're going to experiment and try a common mod where we cut off the bottom piece. Not sure if it's an improvement, but it'll do for now. There's just one more thing I'm installing here, but we'll move past it for now. Now we need to drive the car for about 500 miles at varying RPM, staying away from high RPM and high loads. Once that's done, we can see if it makes power or if it breaks hearts. But until then, thanks for watching.